Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 8 2020 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a mixed bag of results for the week. Definitely one of the lower ended weekends for my predictions overall. So this week against the spread, I am 6-7. One of my first losing records against the spread in a very long time since the season has began. And straight up this week, I went 10-3. So I definitely had a bounce back week. I have one more game already than I did last week at the 9-5 mark at 10-3. I will take that. So that equals to about 46 and 77% respectively. And now overall for the year against the spread, I am 61, 42, and 1 against the spread. And straight up, I am now 72, 31, and 1. That equals up to 59 and about 70%, 69.8%, respectively through the year. So definitely still at one of my better paces for against the spread. Though not hitting that 60 mark is a little disappointing. And I'm just hoping that this week, with the new set of 14 games, that I can improve my against the spread record. And straight up, again, one of the best starts I've ever had. 41 games above 500. I hope to continue that, and the track to 70% is very much alive and attainable, hopefully, by the end of this week. It definitely was also a bizarre weekend against the spread with the Lions Falcons finish. I could have had that one if Todd Gurley did not score, and Lions would have kicked the field goal to win at the gun 19 to or actually no, I wouldn't have won that one against the spread, but I guess I'm happy they scored. So I had the 6-point lead, but then Matt Stafford drove down with about a minute to go and won the game for the Lions 23-22 off a Matt Prater 47-yard extra point after Danny Amendola committed an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So that was a crazy finish. The Browns-Bengals game where after Baker went 0 of 5 with an interception and hurting Odell Beckham's blowing out his ACL, and he's now out for the year. He goes basically 23 of, I believe, 24 to finish the game, and he throws the game-winning touchdown in the final minute to Donovan Peoples-Jones, the former rookie wide receiver from the University of Michigan. And if Cody Parkey kicks the extra point, the line was 3.5. I could have won with that one with 4. You have those two crazy finishes that I could have gotten this week. I had the Charger game at 8. It was 29-39, basically the field goal by Badgley came through to make it 10, so I was 2 points away from that one. And if David Moore doesn't hold in the end zone and Russell Wilson doesn't throw 3 interceptions and Benson Mayowa doesn't jump or commit a leaping penalty on the Seattle special teams unit, I could have had the Seahawks game by 6 with the game in any of those scenarios, even if it's a 7-point game at that point or the DK Metcalf scoring TD, which was the second biggest play he made of the game when he stopped a Russell Wilson interception to safety Buda Baker by running almost 100 yards at about 22 miles per hour. Definitely the fastest wide receiver his brand this year, and one of the greatest defensive plays of this season. So there are about 3 against the spread games right there that I could have had. The only 2 bad ones that I kind of regret from this week were probably Dallas and Washington. Washington's defensive line just smothered the remains of the Cowboys' offensive line. Andy Dalton really had nothing to work with. He really couldn't move. When Landon Collins stripped him early on in the beginning of the game and Dalton Schultz had the cover in the end zone, basically the Cowboys got a field goal. But then after that, though, you pretty much knew the Washington football team had that game in hand. It pretty much glided through, even though I do want to wish Landon Collins a speedy recovery. He tore his Achilles and is now out for the year. So, but that injury didn't matter. And also, speaking of injuries, best of wishes to Andy Dalton. Suffered a pretty nasty concussion by linebacker John Bostic when he was trying to slide, and Bostic hit him on his way down. He is not going to get suspended. I am surprised by that because I felt like that shot was blatant in its intent. I don't think Bostic's a dirty player, but that was a dirty play by John Bostic to knock Andy Dalton out. But I guess good for him, and best luck to him. He will probably lose his game check, and he should lose the next week's game check as well. But with that one, that was just a really bad one. And then the other bad one was Denver plus 9.5. After the way they played New England, I thought, well, okay, hey, Denver's on a little bit of momentum. They played well. But then you saw the New England Patriots yesterday have the worst home loss in the Bill Belichick era by 27 points, 33-6. And it wasn't even like Jimmy Garoppolo had a sensational game. He only threw for about over little under 200 yards and had 2 interceptions to Devin McCourty and I forget the other, to Devin McCourty and somebody else, but he played a horrible game, and Deebo Samuel and Jeff Wilson Jr., their third string running back, left the game, and it still didn't matter. So to me, that was one where, and as I was watching the Chiefs play, they played a all-around fundamental good game. You could argue that they went 0 of 8 on third down, which is a concern. But when you get a 1 or 2 yard kickoff return by Byron Pringle, a pick six by Sorensen, they ran the ball pretty well, and just Denver just couldn't get itself out of its own way. And that was the one thing I regretted. I'm like, well, KC just, it wasn't pretty, but I think the thing that's scary about the Chiefs, when you look at them in the AFC, they are getting much more balanced. And knowing that Patrick Mahomes at any point can go off into a nuclear, radioactive, beast mode game, but that he doesn't have to, and he can just throw for 200 yards in TD. That's scary, and that's showing how well-rounded this Chiefs team is becoming, and this is why they are, in my opinion, still the favorite to be in the AFC, to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl for the second consecutive year. So, all right, so before I get into my picks, the buys of this week are the Arizona Cardinals, Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Washington football team. So if you have DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, the Cardinals defense, Kenyon Drake, even though he suffered an ankle injury, Deshaun Watson, Brandon Cooks, David Johnson, Texans defense, Kyrie Fairbairn, Zane Gonzalez, Gardner Minshew, Dede Westbrook, Johnny Robinson, Tyler Eifert, the Washington defense, Antonio Gibson, Kyle Allen, Terry McLaurin. If you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week. All right, so time for my picks for this week. So on Thursday, when the 1-6 Atlanta Falcons go to the 3-4 Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Panthers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like Carolina here, -2.5, and Carolina straight up. Then on Sunday, when the 2-4 New England Patriots go to the 5-2 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Buffalo here, -3.5, and Buffalo straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-1 Tennessee Titans go to the 1-5-1 Cincinnati Bengals. Or I'm sorry, let me see here. The 1-5-1 Cincinnati Bengals. The Tennessee Titans are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Tennessee Titans here to win straight up, but I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals +5.5. Then the next game, when the 6-0 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 5-1 Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens are 4-point favorites in this game. In an upset here, and sorry, Ravens fans, I have to go with my head here over my heart, just from what I've seen the Steelers do and the Ravens do through the past 7 weeks. Give me the Pittsburgh Steelers here to win straight up, and they are 4-point underdogs, so if I like them straight up, give me the Pittsburgh Steelers +4. Then the next game, when the 3-3 Las Vegas Raiders go to the 5-2 Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like a slight upset here, so give me the Las Vegas Raiders here +2.5, and Las Vegas Raiders here straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-2 Indianapolis Colts go to the 3-3 Detroit Lions, which is weird to say. Or I don't think anybody would expect the Lions to be 500 through 6 games, but shout out to Halfman's picks. Sorry, buddy. When the 4-2 Indianapolis Colts go to the 3-3 Detroit Lions, the Indianapolis Colts are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like Indianapolis here -2.5, and Indianapolis straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-5 Minnesota Vikings go to the 5-1 Green Bay Packers, the Green Bay Packers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here -6.5, and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, in the lopsided game of the year, when the 0-7 New York Jets go to the 6-1 Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs are 19.5-point favorites in this game. By far the largest spread the entire year. The best team in the AFC going up against the worst. Usually with these huge numbers, I usually take the underdog. But with how both teams have been playing, I have to take the Chiefs here, especially at home. So give me the Kansas City Chiefs here -19.5, and Kansas City straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-3 or 5-2 Los Angeles Rams go to the 3-3 Miami Dolphins, the LA Rams are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams here -3.5, and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-4 Los Angeles Chargers go to the 2-4 Denver Broncos in a battle to see who gets out of the basement of the AFC West. The Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like the Los Angeles Chargers here, -3. The Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-2 New Orleans Saints go to the 6-1 or 5-2 Chicago Bears. Excuse me. The Chicago Bears are 2.5-point underdogs in this game. I'd like an upset here, so give me the Chicago Bears here +2.5 and Chicago Bears straight up. The next game, when the 4-3 San Francisco 49ers go to the 5-1 Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Seattle here -3 and Seattle straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-5 Dallas Cowboys go to the 2-4-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles are a 7.5-point favorite in this game. I like the Philadelphia Eagles here -7.5 and the Philadelphia Eagles straight up. And finally, in the Monday Night Football game, when the 5-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 1-6 New York Giants, this is a line from CBS Sports. All the other lines from my other website, Oddshark. I will find the Oddshark's line when they put it up. But from CBS, they said this game was a 10-point game, and I like that line for the Buccaneers. So give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here -10 and Tampa Bay straight up. All right, it's time for my thoughts on each game. The Carolina Panthers over the Atlanta Falcons. This is one where I had some hope for Raheem Morris after that big win for the Falcons over the Vikings. And then I watched that Lions-Falcons game, and I'll have to give Raheem Morris this. He's definitely got that defense playing better, because to see the Falcons give up under 30 points in back-to-back games, that's pretty impressive, especially with how the year started with them really not even doing that right, or up to Carolina giving up 23. So a pretty impressive job for them, in the two games under Raheem Morris to get 22 and 25 for, the Falcons defense. And the Falcons offense did, an okay job. Todd Gurley, had a decent running game. Russell Gage made a few big receptions. But at the end of the day, the Falcons just find ways to lose games. And if I knew ways to lose games, especially with Todd Gurley, running it right at the goal line, he tried to fall to basically drain the clock out of the gun, but he couldn't do it. And there was a clock snafu that got him to about 2 seconds. They didn't know if they were able to spike it. And then Stafford throws a TD pass to T.J. Hockenson to win the football game. And to me, it's hard to pick Atlanta when moments like that happen. Just on the possession before, Trey Flowers got a fumble recovery off Matt Ryan from a sack, and Matt Prater hit some huge field goals, 2 50-yarders and I believe a 49-yarder in the game. And it's just really hard to buy Atlanta. Where Carolina's got a few wins, and basically they've been competitive in every game except week 2 against Tampa Bay. But I just have to feel like the Panthers are playing better. The Panthers they should maybe get Christian McCaffrey back possibly. Even though again they played week 7, short week 8. I was expecting back week 9, and they just played each other 2 weeks ago. So where the Falcons have played better defense, and maybe they've looked a little bit more motivated, and they'll have Julio Jones in the game, which could help the Atlanta offense. I have to go with the Panthers here because I just feel like DJ Moore's played pretty well. He had 2 touchdowns for 79 yards combined. I know it's a few other receptions. The Panthers defense made some big stops. Or the Panthers defense had some moments where they made stops. And Joey Sly was just about an inch or less than an inch away from being able to kick the long field goal to tie the game. And I just feel like, again, the Panthers are at home. They've been playing more consistently. And this Falcons team, as good as they've been, it's one of those things where the Panthers' consistency and ability to close games should be able to beat, or the Panthers' ability to play in close games. Sometimes they've been able to close them, sometimes they've not. And Atlanta's just consistent ability to somehow choke games away this year, and definitely over the last couple years after the Super Bowl, I have to go with the Panthers here in this one because I feel like Bridgewater played another efficient game, and I just don't see the Falcons being able to, match that and just match the efficiency of the Panthers in this game. So that's why I like to go the Carolina Panthers here -2.5 and the Carolina Panthers straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the New England Patriots. This is one where I'm taking the Bills because what I've seen out of the New England Patriots has been the worst football they have had probably since the early 90s before Bill Parcells got there. Cam Newton, over the last 2 games, has no TDs and 5 interceptions. They've scored a grand total of 18 points in their last 2 games, and they've only scored 1 touchdown, I believe, in those last 2 games. They really can't run the ball. Their rushing yards have dropped down every single week. The defense was getting shredded by the Niners' backup receiver or backup running backs. Jeff Wilson had over 100 yards rushing, and then their fourth-string running back came in and he made some nice runs. And the Pats really don't have any offensive production. Julian Edelman only had 1 catch in the game. Ever since that Seattle game, he's basically disappeared from the team. N'Keal Harry left the game with a head injury. I don't think N'Keal Harry, he's been a bust basically since he's gotten to New England from Arizona State. I really don't think that would matter. But I just look at the Bills and go, well, this is one of those games where the Bills know last year with Brady that basically when Josh Allen got concussed and Matt Barkley came in, they lost the game, even though the game ended up, I think, being a 6-point game, 16-10 for the Patriots. This is one of those where Josh Allen and the Bills, they just seem to have enough ability and just enough consistency to beat up a bad Patriot team. A bad Patriot team that is reeling from COVID holdouts, the injury to Sony Michel, and they just really can't. And Cam's inefficiency against the Bills defense that played okay, that did a good job against the Jets. I think the bigger problem was the Bills' offense being the lack of ability to move the football. The Jets were actually up 10-0 in a football game. That's hard to believe, but they were. They were up 10-0 after Samaje Perine got a 5-yard rushing touchdown. But in this game, I have to take the Bills because I just feel like the Bills, even if they play as they did last week and they played over the last couple weeks, I just think the Bills' defense can clamp down on the Patriots' offense enough that it's not going to matter. I think Allen, with his feet, with his stronger arm, with his ability to throw, Dawson Knox and Tyler Kroft, hopefully they can get their tight ends back this week after Dawson tested positive for COVID. Hopefully he gets a quick recovery. But I'm taking the Bills here because they're at home, and this Bills team is just going to be playing better football, and I trust them enough offensively that their defense can pretty much shut down the very limited Patriots offense and put the Patriots on a 4-game losing streak for the first time since 2002. And like I mentioned before, that was the worst loss in the Belichick era. So if anybody's keeping score at home, it's the 5-2 Tampa Bay Bucks and the 2-4 New England Patriots. Tom Brady is winning this debate between Brady and Belichick. So just for that out there. So that's like the Buffalo Bills here, -3.5, and Buffalo Bills straight up. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a game to where it's like a great mesh of two teams that you could say the Bengals could beat the Titans, and the Titans could have been the Bengals. These teams play in close games every week, it seems like. Basically, the Titans and Bengals both have one game that was a win and a loss, respectively, that wasn't even close. The Titans blowing out the Bills, and the Bengals getting blown out by the Ravens. Every other game, these two teams have basically been nip and tuck in games to where the Titans, just every single time, somehow found a way to win the game. And even against Pittsburgh, I know you can say, well, that one, look, they came back, they scored 17 unanswered points. Tannehill drove them down the field. Again, I don't get the 3rd and 13 bomb to the end zone. They got 3 interceptions off Ben, who was entering the game at 10 TDs, 1 interception. So he's not, I believe, 12-4 or 12 TDs, 4 interceptions because of the Titans getting Amani Hooker, Jerron Brown, and then I forget the third one who that went to. But that was the one where basically threw a seam route at the end zone. It went off the back of one Titans player, and I believe Evans picked it off for the last one. I'm not exactly sure. Someone could inform me on that. That'd be great. But this is one of those games to where you have to trust the closing ability of the Titans to take over the choking ability of the Bengals. And by the way, very quickly, and I'll mention this again, Zach Taylor needs to get fired. I'm sorry, but you can't have this, Joe Burrow, who's playing very well statistically. He's actually one of the top 3 QB leaders in passing yards, and you can't just keep choking week after week after week after week. You have Joe Mixon out there, but Giovanni Bernard picks up the slack. And he's 3-19-1 as a head coach. I know you can say, well, this team's young and they're way better than they were last year. Sure, but they're not really, because to quote the great Bill Parcells quote, your record tells you who you are. And the Cincinnati Bengals right now are one of the worst teams in football. I don't care about style points. I don't care about, if it looks better, product and production wise and marketability wise. You can watch Bengals games to be entertained, but I'd rather have ugly wins than pretty losses any day of the week. So, so the Bengals should fire Zach Taylor. So, but yeah, to get back on the track for the game, I'm taking the Titans here just because of that closing ability, and also the Bengals on the line because here are the Bengals' losses: 16-13, 3 points; 35-30, 5 points. You had the tie at Philly, get one blowout, and then they had the last 2 games. They lost to Cleveland by 3, and they lost to Indy, I believe, by 4. Or I'm sorry, they won by 6. So this team has pretty much been in 1-score games the entire year, and they've been able to cover the spread 5 of the 6 games that they have played as an underdog. So I'm going to take the Bengals on the line just for that reason. And the Titans, again, Titans wins 2 points, 3 points, 1 point, 6 points, 3-point loss, and the Titans game an extra 4. So this game is going to be great. It's going to be entertaining. The Bengals going to make it fun? Sure, they will. But the Titans, they're going to find another way to eke out another close victory and get to 6-1 for the year and still maintain a nice positioning of first place in the AFC South. So that's all I like the Cincinnati Bengals here plus 5.5, but the Tennessee Titans straight up. The next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Baltimore Ravens. This is a game where I am taking the Pittsburgh Steelers just based off the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is the best in the league. The only defense I could see equivalent to Pittsburgh is Tampa Bay's and maybe Chicago's. But Pittsburgh's defense, top down in the AFC, is the best defense all the way around. It's even better than the Ravens' defense. And the way Ben's been playing with James Conner had 100 yards from scrimmage. Juju Smith-Schuster had 85 yards receiving. Deontay Johnson had 2 big touchdowns, and he was able to come back in the game. And the Steelers, for only the third time in Mike Tomlin's career, he was able to win a football game with a -3 turnover differential. I found a great stat that basically, if you have 3+ turnovers in a football game, you are supposed to win that game 91% of the time. So for the Pittsburgh Steelers to pull out that victory against the Titans, no slouch of a football team, is remarkable. And I just look at the Ravens and I go, yeah, our defense has been solid, but if you really think about it, we have essentially been like the New England Patriots last year. And what I mean is that we've dominated the Browns, even though the Browns are not a bad football team. So that's a pretty good win for the Ravens. But we dominated the 1-win Texans. We dominated the 0-win Bengals. We dominated the 2-win Washington team and a 2-win Eagles team. Basically, we're just kicking tomato cans down the road, and we haven't really looked as efficient as, offensively as I would like. Lamar hasn't thrown for over, I think, 200 passing yards in about 2 or 3 straight games. He's doing a lot more sidearm. He's making some interesting turnover. He had some bad turnovers. And last 2 weeks ago, before our bye, when we played Philadelphia, it got down to a 2-point football game. And when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, that's the reason why they traded a 3rd and 5th round pick for former Jaguars and Vikings defensive end Yannick Ngakoue, who's coming back to his home state. He was rented from Bowie and played for the University of Maryland. That's the reason why we traded for him. And now we have Calais Campbell and Yannick, 2 guys from the 2017 Saxonville team, on our defensive line. And to me, I think it'll help, but I just have to feel like the Steelers' offensive line should be able to hold up. We haven't been really able to run the ball as efficiently or as smoothly as I would like. And if the Steelers' defensive line can shut down Derrick Henry, they can definitely shut down Ingram, Edwards, and Dobbins and Lamar combined as a quartet. They definitely can do that. And I just don't have trust in Lamar being able to, out-decision and out-throw Ben in this kind of game. Remember, in Week 4, that was his worst game of the whole year in the regular season, was in Pittsburgh. And that was a Mason Rudolph at quarterback, or that was a Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges at quarterback. before old Thomas knocked out of concussion. So I just think right now the Steelers are just clearly the better football team in pretty much most ways, offensively, defensively, a wide receiver, at scheme. The only advantage we have is our kicking and punting, but that's it. And even if the Ravens win, most of these Steelers-Ravens games come within 3 points. So even though I thought the Ravens would win, I would still take the Steelers +4 because this game is going to come down to essentially a field goal or a last-second play that's going to be within 4 points itself. So that's just from the history of the last several games. So should be a great game. Steelers-Ravens always entertaining and fun, but and physical. Give me the Pittsburgh Steelers here +4 because I feel like they're a better all-around team. Lamar's going to struggle against his defense like he did week 4 last year, and the Steelers eke out a victory and solidify their standing as the best team in the division and the best team in the NFL on a week-to-week basis right now in the league. So that's why the Pittsburgh Steelers are +4 and Pittsburgh Steelers straight up. The next game, the Las Vegas Raiders over the Cleveland Browns. This is a game right here to where I am taking the Las Vegas Raiders because of the injury to Odell Beckham Jr. for the Cleveland Browns. The Las Vegas Raiders at 500 are a weird team. It's a weird story to where you can look at the Raiders wins. Panthers, not a bad W. Saints, quality win. Chiefs, quality win. The best win of their year by far in the AFC by beating the defending Super Bowl champs. And then you look at their losses. Ugly loss to New England. Competitive game against Buffalo. And an ugly loss to Tampa Bay. So you really don't know what this Raiders team is going to give you week to week in these games. But I know Derek Carr is playing good and efficient football. He had the one pick late in the game yesterday against the Bucks. But he also had the nice touchdown to Darren Waller late in the game. And it was a 24-20 game entering the early part of the fourth quarter. So that game was a little more competitive before Brady and that offense really started to strike on a quick basis with 3 fourth-quarter touchdowns. And I just look at Cleveland and go, that Cleveland team is not very good defensively. It's not very good defensively. Like, besides Myles Garrett, who's pretty much, on a pace. I think they said that in about 35 or 36 career games, he has had 1 sack in almost every game except one throughout his entire career. That's an incredible pace for a defensive end of Myles Garrett's caliber. But I just look at the Raiders and go, I think their defense can shut down the remaining bits of the Cleveland offense because of Odell Beckham now out. It's going to be Jarvis Landry and Rashard Higgins and Austin Hooper, who had an appendectomy last week. He may not be able to play, so it's going to be Harrison Bryant and David Njoku again. And Jonathan Abrams should be able to come back from the COVID list. And I just feel like with the Raiders, this is a game that they win because they somehow seem to have shown that they play better. Just like when you doubt them, they'll play better. Just when you have faith in them, they're starting to become the Tennessee Titans, of where every time you bet on them, every time they're favored, they're gonna let you down. But every time they're doubted on, they're gonna play well and win. So I feel like they're underdogs now. So I think this is where they play a good game against a banged up Browns team on the especially about losing Odell. It's gonna hurt them in this game. And I think they get the victory over the 5-2 Browns, dropping the 5-3. So that's like the Las Vegas Raiders here +2.5, and the Las Vegas Raiders straight up. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Detroit Lions. This is one where I have to take the Colts because I have to trust the Colts defense. The Colts defense was down 21-0 against the Bengals. And they ended up holding the Bengals for the rest of the game to 6 points in the second half. So that defense has shown you, even with Darius Leonard out and some other injuries, with Malik Hooker out, that defense has shown you how effective it's been. It's been 4th in points, 2nd in yards. It's the second best pass defense in terms of yards, and it's a top 10 rushing defense that's given up the 3rd fewest in rushing yards. So Matt Eberflus has done a phenomenal job. And I just feel like with the Lions that it's one of those things to where if the Lions and Falcons were great mirror images of each other. You didn't know which team was going to blow it. You didn't know it's like Will Patricia with his decision making and giving up the touchdown. But then it goes on Raheem Morris and Todd Gurley's stopping into the end zone, stopping the clock. It's just this weird game of just odd, who's going to blow the game, at the last second, and it ended up being the Falcons. So this one with the Colts are more disciplined. I don't think the Lions are going to get nearly as much of pass rush. I think Rivers and Jonathan Taylor, they're rested. They should be able to play an effective game against a bad Lions defense that just a couple weeks ago gave up 29 straight points to the New Orleans Saints offense. When you look at, the only two teams they beat were the Jags and the Cardinals, which kind of is a weird upset victory. But remember, that took 3 interceptions from Kyler Murray, the last one to Jeff Okudah, to get them that victory. Where the Colts, I feel like, could the Lions surprise the Colts? Sure, because I feel like the Lions, Kenny Galladay has been, fantastic. He had another 100-yard game. Stafford's played pretty well. Prater's been kicking the ball well. DeAndre Swift's had a nice running addition. Hawkinson's a good tight end. And this Lions offense against this Colts defense, I feel like, can have some moments. But if you're going to tell me, okay, the Falcons defense, which is one of the worst, against one of the best defenses, give me the defense, and they're at home. And I think I'm going to try to look this up here real quickly. Let's see. Let's go head to head. I see it here. Okay, here we go. Head to head. The last time, or the Colts have won 4 of the last 5, and for the Colts, they won 4. They've won 4 of the last 5, and they have won the last 2 in Detroit. The last time the Colts lost in Detroit, you have to go back to November 23rd, 1997, week 13. Week 13 in 1997 was the last time the Indianapolis Colts went into Detroit, the last time the Lions won in Detroit. The last time they won in Detroit was in 1997. So I feel like for them, I think they get this opportunity to surprise people, and I'll take the Colts to win just off that merit. So that's why I gave Indianapolis Colts here -2.5, and Indianapolis Colts straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Minnesota Vikings. This is fairly easy. The Minnesota Vikings are one of the worst teams in the National Football League. They just traded away Yannick Ngakoue and other outstanding pass rusher Danielle Hunter was put on the IR with a herniated disc injury. So they have no pass rush. The Vikings offense has let go of Kyle Rudolph. Dalvin Cook could be coming off an abductor strain. And the Green Bay Packers, after getting blown out by the Bucs, played a very good game against the Texans where they pretty much dominated in all phases. They didn't even have Aaron Jones, and Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon did an okay job. Rodgers had a touchdown. Devontae Adams had a massive day, over 190 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Jay Sternberger came in with a big touchdown as well. And I just look at the Vikings. The last time they played them, they got up to a massive lead. The score ended up being an 8-point game. I believe it was 42-34, but it didn't matter. And I just think the Packers are just clearly better. Kirk Cousins at Lambeau has not done a very good job. I remember the first time he played at Lambeau a couple years ago, he kept turning it over. I can definitely see that happening again. Because remember, this is the same guy that just from his last game threw 3 interceptions and a half against the Falcons defense. And the Packers game is just easy. But before I go into the next game, I just want to make this real quick notion about what the Vikings should do. And this shout out to Gio Knows, another great prognosticator. Check out his Twitter, the 702 call, if you want to see his picks for this year. I just want to say to every Vikings fan, here's what I would do. Okay? Next year, you got to blow this entire team up. And the guys you have to trade or cut are Harrison Smith, the safety. You have to trade away Anthony Barr if you can. You have to trade away Adam Thielen if you can. You have to trade away Danielle Hunter. And you have to trade away Kyle Rudolph. You have to get every expensive contract off the books. And the only guys that you keep, and I would try to get rid of Kirk Cousins too, but you're not going to be able to. The only guys that I would keep are Anthony Harris, the safety, Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, and Dalvin Cook, the running back, because you just paid him earlier this offseason before the season started on a new contract. So those are the only 4 guys that should remain. All the other high-priced assets that are on rookie deals or young contracts or on expiring deals, trade them or get rid of them in any way you can, because this is a complete rebuild that needs to begin. So that's all I like the Green Bay Packers here, -6.5, and the Green Bay Packers straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the New York Jets. Look, this is one where essentially this is the best team against the worst team. And the argument that I'm going to say for everybody to take the Chiefs on the money line at 19.5 points is this one. Is that this is under 20 points, and the Chiefs games have gone 34-20, 23-20, 37-20, 26-17, and just won a game 43-17. So right there, they've pretty much won games by over 2 scores a majority of the time, and they had an 8-point loss to the Raiders added in there, 40-32. When you look at the New York Jets, the Jets have pretty much shown you as well that they're right around that ballpark for their average loss as well. They've had a 10-point loss week 1, an 18-point loss week 2, a 29-point loss week 3, a 9-point loss week 4, a 20-point loss week 5, a 24-point loss week 6, and an 8-point loss week 7. So it's more often than not from the Jets this year. They can lose right around that 18 to 20-point range. And the Chiefs have shown you with a 17-point win, the 26-point win, the 16-point win, they can hang around that 16 to 20 range. So I feel like with this game, the Chiefs should be able to hold on here because I feel like with the Bills' offense is not the Chiefs' offense. Mahomes is not Josh Allen. Mahomes has much more talent around him. Le'Veon Bell did okay. He had about 9 carries for about 40 yards. Allaire did okay. And I just feel like with I don't think they're going to be as fortunate to get the special teams touchdown or maybe, they could get a defensive touchdown. Sam Darnold's thrown a couple pick sixes already this year, and they've looked pretty bad. I remember the first play of the Niners game week 2, Raheem Mostert ran up the ball right up 80 yards. So this Chiefs team at home should be able to kind of hang around that margin with their offense and with their defense. And by the way, the Chiefs defense has done pretty well. It's been underrated this year. They are 9th in points, 18th in yards, the 5th best passing defense in yards. The one weakness they have is the running game. And even though Frank Gore, the old man, the inconvenient truth, they've given up the 2nd most rushing yards. I don't think Frank doesn't have enough energy to keep that going around this time. So I just think, again, the Chiefs, they're just clearly better. If you're in a survivor pool, this would be an easy pick. This is one I would take. Pretty much, to me, if you're in a survivor pool, here's some free advice. Just take who the Jets are facing. Even if it's New England or bad team, just take who playing the Jets. And I just feel like for Mahomes and this team, it should just be an easy win that shouldn't take that much effort. And honestly, I feel like by the 4th quarter, Chad Henne should be in the game. And give Mahomes basically a college 4th quarter off. I feel like that's how much of a difference these two teams have. So that's like the Kansas City Chiefs here, -19.5, and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Miami Dolphins. This is a game to where I'm torn because after what I saw in the Rams last Sunday, it was a bit concerning, especially with how the Niners looked the week before against the same Dolphins, and they looked pretty effective against them on Sunday Night Football, and they looked even better against the New England Patriots that nobody expected. And so I really want to see how they play against the Bears, and maybe I could regret, looking at this game or, doing this video on Monday, especially with what happens. But I'm going to take the Rams here just for one sole reason. As everybody probably saw last week, the Miami Dolphins made the quarterback change of starting out Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback from the University of Alabama, and the 5th overall pick at their bye week to give them a week to prepare before the Rams. And I have some mixed feelings about this. I think that it's a smart move to do it right now to look at the opportunity of saying Fitzpatrick got you to a point at 6 games at 500. You look at the rest of the division, you're clearly better than the Jets, and you are better than the Patriots right now, and you've played well against the Bills. So you are in this division race and a playoff spot right now. And Fitzpatrick always has a ceiling of where as the expectations continued to grow, he would shrink, so I feel like Tua is there. However, when you look at the Dolphins' next 2 opponents, they play the Rams and the Cardinals in back-to-back games. And I don't know if you would want to have Tua in those 2 games and just let Fitzpatrick take those 2 possible L's or probable L's to get to the game against the Chargers to where you could pretty much feel more comfortable playing Tua against a weaker team for his debut. But from what I've seen from Justin Herbert, what I've seen from Joe Burrow, they've played well in their first games, but they did not win them. They both ended up losing by 3 points. So I feel like with the Rams, I will give them a little more credit due to the competition they played, and I think they get a 4-point win. So that's why I got the Rams at -3.5, and I think that's why they win. I also think Aaron Donald will go through the Miami Dolphins offensive line pretty well. He's my defensive player of the year, and I think Jared Goff plays a decent game against an improved Dolphins secondary, but I feel like they should be able to run the ball. The Patriots are able to in week 1. The Seahawks are able to move the ball through the air with Russell Wilson. I think Goff with the weapons of Higbee, Henderson, Woods, Kupp, Everett, Josh Reynolds. This Rams team should be able to go to Miami and get a good win. So that's why the LA Rams are -3.5, and the LA Rams straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Denver Broncos. This is one where I've seen the Denver Broncos. They're not very good. Drew Lock has played, He got a big win over the Patriots, but I kind of see that as more bad Patriots than good Broncos. And just yesterday in the snow, after the way they played last time, it was pretty much the same when Drew Lock played them. It really wasn't that competitive. They really couldn't, run the ball. They kept turning it over. And I just look at the Chargers and go, I really like what Justin Herbert has done. He has been an outstanding rookie. He's probably my offensive rookie of the year right now. Probably put Clyde Edwards-Helaire second and Joe Burrow third. But Justin Herbert has thrown for over 300 yards, and I believe his first, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. In his first 5 starts, he's been sensational. The throws to Virgil Green and Guyton were massive. Keenan Allen had 10 receptions for 125 yards. And I just feel like with the Chargers, they have more talent, and they can compete better against this Broncos team, who may surprise people. And I think the only reason why I took the Chargers as well is it was such a small line. The Jaguars are giving 8 points, and I'm like, okay, there's no way the Chargers don't, keep within 1 score. Usually they somehow will usually choke games or put themselves in positions to where they can't win. I feel like, again, that still could happen with Denver. It's still the Chargers division game last year. I believe Drew Lock won his first start in the NFL by playing the Chargers, and he threw a prayer up in the air, and he was essentially trying to get the pass interference call, which he got, and that was the difference in the game. And I just feel like with the Chargers, both those guys remember that, and they're going to take that to heart and show the Denver Broncos, who are banged up, even though they had A.J. Bouye back, some other assets, that they are a better team that's more mentally tough and can, execute and play better than the Broncos in a game that is kind of sneaky for the wild card, but definitely a pressure-packed game for both coaches, whose seats are, I would say, Lynn's is warmer than Fangio's, but they're both warm. They're both getting warm. If the owners and the tenure and the positions they're in, both these coaches and teams need wins to keep moving forward to try to show that they can keep being the coach of the team going into next season for 2021. So that's why the Los Angeles Chargers are -3 and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the New Orleans Saints. This is one of those games to where I'm taking the Chicago Bears based on the fact that the Saints have been fantastic. They were 0-2 entering the year without Michael Thomas. They are now, I believe, 3-4. They've won 3 straight games without Michael Thomas. They didn't even have Emmanuel Sanders out yesterday, and they were able to win the game against the Panthers with their 2 best offensive wide receiving weapons. So definitely an impressive tip of the cap to Sean Payton and Drew Brees in leading this offense. He also is now Drew Brees is second in career touchdown passes at 558 compared to Tom Brady, who's only one ahead at 559. But I just have to look at what's happened. And this is kind of like the Chargers and Broncos in the same sense of last year, Teddy Bridgewater, to end his run before Drew came back against the Cardinals, played the Bears, and the Bears got embarrassed by Teddy Bridgewater, who played an efficient game. The Bears were running draw plays, and they won the game, I believe, by 19 points. Most of those Bear players are still there. Remember that from last year. And Teddy's not back there anymore, and this Saints offense is not nearly as effective and potent without their two best weapons. And I also don't think Emmanuel and Michael will play because Michael's been dealing with a hamstring and an ankle injury now, and Emmanuel Sanders tested positive for the coronavirus on Thursday. So if you look at the typical incubation period, that should be 10 days. So he could maybe come back, but I would expect him back for Week 9 in the big game against Tampa that would basically decide the winner of the NFC South. But I just feel like if those two guys aren't playing, if you're dealing with Traquan Smith, I know that there was that number 12, I think his name was Marcus Callaway, who was making some plays, but I think he left the game early. And that Saints defense just is not the same. Foles has been playing, okay football. He's got a good enough arm to get it to Allen Robinson. Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet can maybe hopefully make some nice plays. And I think Montgomery should be able to do something on the ground, maybe. I'm not exactly sure. He's been pretty much a bust this year in terms of his production. But I'm going to take the Bears. They're also at home. Getting out into Chicago at this time of year for the Saints that have been playing in a dome is going to be tough. It might be cold. It might be windy and brisk. And I just think the Bears at home with the limited Saints offense should be able to shut down them long enough to get Foles to get around 20 to 27 points to win the game in a close physical game. So that's like the Chicago Bears here plus 2.5 and Chicago Bears straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the San Francisco 49ers. Boy, this game was tough because the 49ers and Seahawks are, if you have to look at the teams, the 49ers have been a more impressive football team compared to the Seattle Seahawks. I know you could say, well, why do you say that? The Niners are 4-3. They had the bad loss against the Dolphins. They're playing about Jimmy Garoppolo. They played about Jimmy Garoppolo. They played about the running backs. They played about George Kittle. They'll have Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas. D Ford Richard Sherman should be back by week 11. But that's the point. This Niners team is at 4-3. They are one game above 500, and they would be leading the NFC East. They would be only a game and a half back out of first for the AFC North. They'd be tied only one game back from the Colts in the AFC South, and they would be second in the AFC West at 4-3, and they're the worst team in the NFC West. And this is with a bunch of backups and nobodies. So, to me right now, give Kyle Shanahan, he's going to be my coach of the year if he can get this team into the playoffs. Because there is no way this team should be 4-3 and have some of the victories they've had, especially against the Giants and the Patriots. And I know you can say, well, the Giants are a bad football team. Yeah, but they shouldn't have dominated, and they shouldn't have dominated the Patriots. And they're literally if Jimmy played against Nick Mullins or C.J. Beathard played against the Eagles, they could really be a 5-2 football team right here as we speak. Because, the other two games, Jimmy played, and that basically was their healthiest, and they got blown up by the Dolphins, which really didn't matter who was a quarterback. So I really like the Niners, but the problem is they lost Jeff Wilson Jr. to an injury. They won't have Sherman back, like I said, and they lost Deebo Samuel to a hamstring injury that will likely take him out against Seattle. I feel like, and I know the Seahawks defense has been atrocious. It's one of the worst in the league. Probably Dallas's is only worse in terms of totality. And look, Russell had 3 interceptions in the game. That was his second, third, and fourth interception of his career in that stadium. Entering the game, he only had 1 interception through 250 attempts in the State Farm Stadium for the Cardinals over his illustrious 10-year career. So that shows you how off Russell Wilson was. And they still only lost by 3 points, and they still had a chance to win it. And I just feel like with the Seahawks, they remember what happened last year. They remember what happened where there was a back-and-forth game for arguably the number 1 seed or the 3 seed for the Seahawks. It came down to the 4-inch line with Jacob Hollister catching a pass. And I think the Seahawks will be motivated to get redemption on the Niners. And Russell Wilson has played and won routinely often against the 49ers team, even with Kyle Shanahan there over the last couple of years. Remember the Monday night game week 9 last year was a great game. And I just have to pick the Seahawks here because I feel like Russ should not play as bad. And the Seahawks defense should be able to hold up better against Jimmy Garoppolo and the limited Niners offense with basically George Kittle and friends at this point. George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and friends. I'll get Brandon Ayuk right. It should be a great game, and I'm going to tell people I would not be surprised if the Niners won this football game. The Niners have been coached incredibly well, and I feel like with the Seahawks defense, Jimmy Garoppolo will be able to move the football. But I feel like with the Seahawks, Jimmy the better quarterback, they're motivated, they're ticked off, and they want to hold on to that division lead in the NFC West, and the Niners just too decimated on injuries to take them in this game with a lot on the line. So That's like the Seattle Seahawks here -3 and the Seattle Seahawks straight up. In the final 2 games, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Dallas Cowboys. This is one where the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys have a hospital ward full of injuries on the defensive line, the offensive line, the secondary, the tight ends, the running back, running backs, wide receivers, and just everywhere. And there's one team that's been able to play competitive and win close games with guys like Travis Fulgham out of Old Dominion, John Hightower. You have Greg Ward, the former quarterback at Houston. You have, Deshaun Jackson left. Alshon Jeffrey hasn't even come in the game from University of South Carolina. Lane Johnson left. They've had Evan Pryor blocking for them. You've had Malik Jackson, who was out last game. Miles Sanders from Penn State is out. And they just look, better. They've looked more competitive. And the Cowboys, ever since they lost Dak and just basically all around, they have no offensive line starter, except maybe Zach Martin will come back from concussion, that's going to be able to play. You have Zeke not being able to run the ball nearly as effectively behind a much weaker offensive line. The Eagles' offensive line led the league in sacks entering after Thursday's game. And I just feel like with the Eagles, they did this game before. Close game. They won 16-9 or 17-9 last year at the end of the year to send the Cowboys home for the postseason. And I just feel like with the Eagles, even through all the injuries, even if they get Alshon back and they can't get Lane back and they just have to mix and match every other secondary or offensive guy that they, have to form together, they will beat the Cowboys because the Cowboys just seem like they don't really care for the rest of the year. They've all had their paychecks. They all are, going to get used to you losing. And they pretty much can maybe hope that they lose long enough to get Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. Could this game be interesting? Sure, because I feel like, again, it's like the NFC East, but I said that last week against Washington, and that bit me in the rear end. So I just have to go with the home team here that's played better and just has looked more motivated to win over the last several weeks, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles by far. Sounds like the Philadelphia Eagles here -7.5, and the Philadelphia Eagles straight up. And finally, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the New York Giants. This is one where it's kind of like Kansas City, the Jets. Pretty much no contest. Tampa's going to dominate on every side of the ball. Joe Judge gets to play his former quarterback. You got you got to work with Tom Brady, so that may be an advantage. It's the New York Giants. Brady's always had a frustration with the New York Giants throughout his career, and the Bucs are just too good on all sides of the ball. Though I will say this to end out for the New York Giants. I will say this. In my opinion, if you strike the record, you strike the talent. You just watch the game, or you strike the record. Maybe not strike the talent. Excuse me. Strike the record. Out of the NFC East, the most impressive team I've seen is the New York Football Giants. Joe Judge has really gotten this team, and he's got his wins, so he's fine coaching, so I can say this, about him. Joe Judge has a 10-point loss to Pittsburgh, a 4-point loss to Chicago, a 3-point loss to the Giants, a 8-point loss to the Rams, a 1-point win against Washington, and a 1-point loss against Philadelphia. That is the best-looking resume I have seen just in terms of competition and upward ascension out of the entire NFC East. Because you can't look at that with the Cowboys. You definitely can't look at that with Washington with some of the games they played. And Philadelphia's looked bad against the Rams, and they couldn't even beat the Bengals. So I know the Eagles are in front, but I just have to give the Giants credit. They're probably the most impressive team just in terms of watching the games that I've seen just in competition out of the whole division. And let me know what you guys think about that. Do you agree with my statement about the Giants being the most competitive team, or do you look at the Eagles as the team that's been better or more competitive? So those are my picks and comments. Those are my picks for this week. So like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page to see several other great prognosticators like Robert Sports Show, Luca Rosano, Bridgewater's Finest, Half Moon's Picks, Leighton Harmon, all those guys and gals that make predictions, Andrew Warren, that make predictions like I do every single week for the football season. And until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Everybody social distance, wash your hands frequently, and wear a mask. And until next time, so long.